For one trip on a camp, you don't have to worry about the kids, right? So it's a lot easier from that standpoint. You just got to watch out for the instructors. They're tough. Want to thank everybody who participated in the auction a couple weeks ago. It was a huge success. Those who went know how much fun it was. I had a great time. Next year is going to be even better. It's been a long time since I've raved about how great our auction has been. They've been a little slower and stuff, but this one was great. The band was incredible. We danced till 11 at night. It was great. Nobody wanted to leave, right? It was great. Let's see. Oh, ducks. We have our Scoutorama Ducks coming up on October 19th in conjunction with the Burbank Kiwanis. Glendale Kiwanis. And
Bruce would like that because he's part of the Burbank.
Yes. That's why I get confused, you know.
Yeah.
I figure they should just be one group like we are, you know.
Yeah.
And so we have 10 units participating and doing scout skills there.
Yes.
So come on out, bring your kids to join in and buy ducks, because if you buy a duck, half the proceeds of that duck goes to the council. So we appreciate as a fundraiser. And we still need to sell, we're trying to sell 100 ducks.
We've already hit the 100 ducks. And
Right.
if people want to donate more, the money goes to the council. We use it for CBO, camporee, campership for scouters, go to camp, uniforms, and all wonderful other things.
All right. So that's the duck race on October 19th. Coming up the second weekend of November is the Order of the Arrow fall ordeal. If your troop hasn't had a OA election in the last year, please notify the lodge and they'll get out there and do an election for you. There's some great new things going on in the order. And
can you repeat the date? I'm sorry.
the date for the Order of the Arrow is the second weekend of November.
The second weekend?
Yes.
Okay, then it's the 9th.
The 9th.
9th, yes.
November 9th.
So that's the fall.
They go in the night before though, so it'd be November 8th.
Yeah, it's Friday to Sunday.
It's from the fall or.
Yeah, fall or
They
deal.
would need to do their elections before then.
Right. And they'll take it right up until like that Wednesday or Thursday even,
Okay.
if you want to schedule one. Also, a great honor for our council is the Order of the Arrow. The next level up from lodge in our council is the section. And we're part of W4N section, and they have a section chief and a section vice chief and a secretary who are the officers for the section, which is comprised of 7 other councils. And the current section chief is from our council, and the current vice chief is from our council. And considering we are the smallest lodge in the area, it's quite a thing. Both those gentlemen were officers last year for the section, and the boys thought they did such a great job that they reelected them. And soon I'll be able to say the boys and the girls did that. So we can't wait till we get some girls first class and 15 days and nights of camping, and then can get elected into the Order of the Arrow. So that's what I have. Anything else that I'm missing, Pete? How's the food go? Are the popcorn going?
Popcorn sales are going strong. Thank you to everybody who's participating in the popcorn sale. Remember that the take order for orders are due on the 25th. So
October 25th, right?
yeah, October 25th is when the popcorn take orders are due.
And any unsold popcorn, you have to bring it back to council on the 24th and 25th.
It's true. If you have any unsold popcorn from the show and sell sale, then you need to return it on the 24th or the 25th.
But if you have any orders, take your show and sell and fill it up before you bring it back.
All right. So next it's, let's see, we go to you.
Yes.
Yes, it's all yours, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so we're talking about rechartering today. Everybody loves rechartering. It's the most fun time of year. But, you know, the reason I'm saying that, and the reason that it's kind of funny is because it's really, it can be kind of a pain, right? But there are some strategies that can make it a lot easier for you to do your rechartering. And it all involves getting started now, as opposed to trying to finish everything on that, in that last week of December, or worse, letting your unit charter lapse and trying to finish it all in the last week of February, where if you don't finish it, your unit will drop. So you don't have to do that. It's easy enough to get started right now, and there's things you can do to make it a simple process. So there's several topics that we're going to cover, and the first, what I want to ask is that you save your questions to the end, because you might have questions, but I'm trying to get through a lot of material. So I will answer questions that anybody has about what I have to say, but I would like you to save them towards the end. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the new background check authorization forms. Amy, did you want to talk about that?
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry, I'll take over for you.
I don't know. Try to find more.
So some of you probably have already received your email about this, and so are sort of familiar, but it's important for the rechartering process, and we will explain why.
Okay, so if you are a registered adult, October 7th, which was Monday, you should have got an email saying that please fill out the additional background form. If your email has changed, you probably won't get the form. There's actually another form, but I only have two hands. This is the one you have to fill on the recharter. National's very strict about this. If we don't get the form, we have to drop the adult. We don't want to do that. So make sure that any registered adult fills out a form. You can turn it in now. You
What's
can
the name of this one? Because I know there were multiple
Yeah,
attachments.
this is this one, and there's one more, but this is the form that you have to send back to us. This is the one that you fill out.
The one with the signature line.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's the one you have to fill back to us, okay? There's been changes in national and across the US about how background checks are being done. So they just want to make sure, the reason why they're doing it is they're trying to keep the kids safe and up to date. So I appreciate if everybody does. It's in your packet. Yes, David?
Is this for all adults, or
All adults who are registered.
what about adult partners?
Lion and Tiger
No,
Partners.
they don't count. It's anybody who's,
Any adult who would fill out an application.
yeah. So the ones that Tiger, like, they fill the bottom part because they're required to have a partner. They do not have to fill out this one. Okay, thank you.
Unless they're den leader.
Yes, a den leader would, because a den leader is a leader who would have to fill out an application. Yes. So basically, what the reason that this is happening is that National wants to run background checks every 5 years on adult leaders, because we want to make sure that we're continuing to make sure that the people involved in scouting who are tasked with taking care of our scouts are the highest quality individuals who could be doing that. So it's so important, and we need this new disclosure, because the fine for not doing it is could be up to $1,000 per person that we run a background check on. So it's very important that it gets done. Okay, the next thing.
I guess for new leaders, is this being worked in the original application?
No,
we
it
have a
isn't.
second
So
one?
if you say you get a leader for a line, make sure that they get it, because they won't get an email because they're not in the system. So everybody who's registered right
But
now,
at some point, maybe next year, they'll add it into the application process, or we always have to have that extra form next year?
I'm not sure. But we'll
National,
let you know.
National will run the forms, and what they normally do is when they won't do anything new until their stock goes down and whatever they send us. But we have 270 councils, so I think the time period for it to flip over will be quicker.
Okay, so the next thing I will answer, I promise I'll answer any question that you have at the end. Changes to the national membership fee. It was announced online in several outlets that the national membership fee will change for 2020. There are no other details besides that, none at all. We don't have any information. Our Scout executive, Mark Krause, doesn't have any information. Our board doesn't have any information beyond that about that membership fee increase. It's just not out there. So as soon as we have any information, we'll make sure to pass it on directly to you, because the truth of the matter is that everybody in this office and all the volunteers who volunteer with the council and all the staff and all the way up to the executive board, we only exist to make possible what you're doing in your units. So we really are always going to be on your side on this, and we want to give you the information, but it just doesn't exist yet. We know that the fee is going up. We don't know anything more than that. Okay. Now, my favorite and the most fun part I had to talk about the unit membership inventory. I talked about this in back in October at the roundtable. That slideshow won't come into won't be useful until we talk about the online recharting process. So you don't have to stand there if you want to.
Oh,
I'll let
okay.
you know. So the unit membership inventory, I have a handout in every person's. Anyway, everybody should have a copy of a handout in your rechartering packet that has information about the unit membership inventory on one side and the unit leadership inventory on the other side. And it's really a great tool because it allows you to get all of the hard work done of rechartering, which is making sure that you know who's going to be registered in your unit in 2020, done early. So the best time to do a unit membership inventory is October. It's done 2 months before your rechartering date, or if you're rechartering in February, like a lot of our home and admin units do, then the best time to do it would be in January. No, sorry, December. So what it is you get a list of every scout who's registered to your unit, and you call every family, and you say, is this scout going to be continuing with us in 2020? And if they aren't, you write down that they're not and why they're not, and then you move on. If you have scouts that aren't registered, you register them immediately and then add them to the inventory. If you have a scout join throughout your process, you add them to the inventory as you go. And while you're doing that, you also want to collect your unit's annual fees, any fees that you consider necessary for your unit. That's unit dues, that's an amount for the national membership fee, which you might want to just collect what it is right now and then put in some extra padding. We'll let you know how much exactly it is as soon as we know. Boys Life, if they want the magazine, and anything else that you want to collect it all at once together. Then, after you do that, you have your spreadsheet, or however you decide to store it, of all that information. Whoever is doing that inventory, make sure that it is in the hands of the person who's actually going to be entering the recharter. I recommend that one person do all of it together, but if you have like a membership share who's separate from your rechartering specialist, or whatever you want to call them, then make sure that rechartering specialist ends up with that inventory, because they're going to use it when they go in to enter their rechartering, and they're going to enter each scout, go in and mark them, are they staying, are they not? And if they have all that on a spreadsheet, they don't have to go calling around and collecting applications in December when there's a deadline fast approaching. Does that make sense? Now, the second part on the other side of that page is the unit leadership inventory. This is the same idea, but it's for your leaders, and it should be done a little differently. You actually have a requirement on how many different leaders you need to have in your unit, which is not true for rechartering for scouts. So when you're getting ready to recharter, you need to make sure. One of the steps in here says you need to make sure you have an institutional head who is not really a registered member, but is just a person at your chartering organization who is the head of that organization, because we need to have them on file. They don't need to have youth protection. They don't need to pay a registration fee. We just need to have an application on file for them so we know who they are. That's all. And then, of course, you need your actual key three. You need a chartered org rep, a unit leader, which would be a Cub Master for Cub Scout packs, and a Scout Master for Scouts BSA troops, and an advisor for a venturing crew. And you need a committee chair and 2 committee members. There are a couple of different positions that mean committee member. The easiest one being committee member, and then new member coordinator is a position that we'll talk about later tonight, that is for Scouts BSA troops. That is also considered a member of the committee for the purposes of meeting these requirements, and pack trainer. So if you have a pack trainer, that person counts towards that requirement. You need to make sure you have those 6 people, but only really 5 registered positions in order to recharter. So that should all be part of your unit leadership inventory, making sure that you filled all those positions. And then, of course, you try to fill any positions that your unit needs, right? In a big troop, 5 people isn't going to be enough to get all the business done. So you might want a troop secretary and some assistant scoutmasters and maybe an assistant scoutmaster in charge of the venturing patrol, whatever you need to make your unit succeed. You should make sure that's part of your unit leadership inventory. Get all that list straightened out in November, and then turn it over to your rechartering chair. So, how many units have done a process that's at least looks similar to the unit membership inventory, the leadership inventory before rechartering in the past? Yeah, it looks like they do, which is good. It can really reduce the stress of having to recharter if you get all that work done ahead of time. Okay. Finally, we're going to talk about the online chartering entry process. So that's what this is for. Is it going to work for me? No. Oh, yes. Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Pierre. So the process this year will look kind of familiar to you, but there are some key differences. The biggest one is that you can't actually finish it before November 1st. Before you could kind of get everything done in October, which is not recommended because you might get some scouts registering. But now you can't actually finish the process at all until November 1st. And second, of course, as of right now, there's no ability to pay through this system because the fee is not set in stone at this point. So the steps are, when you first go into the rechartering system, you'll click the register button. This is for the first time that somebody goes in for your unit. There's a code that's on the back of your envelopes on a little label. That code is what you enter here for access code. And then you select your unit's type and you put in your unit number. When you're entering your unit number, make sure that you use the 4-digit number. You know, if your pack is pack 310, for example, your number here is going to be 0310. Same if you have a 2-digit number, it's 00, say 84 for pack 84. Does that make sense? After you've done this process, you can you'll enter your information, and then you can go in and without having to enter that code or anything, log in using your email address and a password that you'll set. So whoever is working on rechartering will have to agree to this confidentiality agreement. They're receiving a lot of personal information of the members of your unit in order to be able to enter it. So it's important that they agree to this so that they keep that information in confidence. This is where they'll put in an email address, their name, so that the system knows who is actually doing the data entry for all of this. So it comes up with a screen that shows you all of the steps before you even get started. And it will take you through each of these steps as you move forward. Now, if you look on the left side, it has a little map showing you which step you're on and which steps are coming up. You have a choice when you begin rechartering to either load the information that already exists in the ScoutNet database, the database that we use here at Council, and that is connected to things like scoutbook.com. You can get the information from there that already exists in the system. You can also upload a roster. There are a couple of pieces of software that I know that at least a couple of our units use, the examples that they have here are Packmaster or Troopmaster. You can actually, if all the information that there is up to date, you can actually export a roster and upload it to the system, and it will start from there. If you're using something like scoutbook.com, you might think you might want to do something like that, but the truth is that if you're using scoutbook.com, the roster that we have in ScoutNet will already match up with what you have in scoutbook.com because those are safe systems. Is this a question that I can answer at the end?
It was a comment about information.
Oh,
in
sure.
Scoutbook.
Yeah, sure. So what is your experience? That's what Roundtable's all about.
Yeah, I mean, you can alter information in Scoutbook, but none of it goes back to ScoutNet.
That is true. Yeah.
So that might be a little bit deceiving.
Yeah.
When the leader or scout is first loaded into Scoutbook, that's the stuff on ScoutNet, and as soon as you alter it, it doesn't go back.
It's true. The actual members that you have, like if you have 34 Cub Scouts in Scoutbook, though you should have 34 Cub Scouts in ScoutNet. But it's true that if you updated an email address in scoutbook.com or something like that, that won't sync back to Scout. So if you want to update like contact information, address, things like that, you will want to do that as part of the recharting process.
Also for positions.
Yeah, positions especially. When you add a position in Scoutbook, it's usually not a registration position. It's usually a position that comes with some ability in Scoutbook. Like if you add a calendar chair, or I don't know exactly what the name for it is, then they'll have the ability to edit the Scoutbook calendar. But that doesn't mean that they're registered in ScoutNet as a calendar chair. In ScoutNet, you should just register them as a committee member because that's the basic registration position. So in stage 2, you actually put in all the information for your members. This is the stuff that should be coming off your unit membership inventory and unit leadership inventory. So the first step is the information about your chartering organization with things like the address, the name of the church that you meet at or are chartered by, whatever that is. Then you have your members, your youth members first. You actually just select on there which members are sticking around. If you have any members that aren't registered, you can add them here. But remember that you really shouldn't, if it's before, unless it's like at the last minute, you shouldn't just be adding members through recharting. You should be, if you're looking through your membership in October and you want to add them to your charter, you should instead just come in and register them. Because at any time during your rechartering process, you can click this update unit roster button right here, and it will pull the new information from ScoutNet. So if you registered a Scout in the Scout shop or on the online system, it'll actually pull their information into your charter here. So you should register them now, and then when you're doing this final process in December, they'll be there. If it's December and you had a Scout come and join at on December 12th, the day before your rechartering is due, and you want to dive in there and add them, you can just click the you can add members, at this step. You can add members, but don't do that unless you're at the very end of your recharting process. The other option that Cub Scout packs have is to promote members. If you have a Cub Scout in your pack that is advancing or is bridging to a Scout troop, you can select them and send them, push them to that Scout troop. This feature is really best for a troop and a pack that have a strong connection because it's usually you as a Cub Scout pack leader don't have access to that troop's rechartering information. You would need their code, which means you would need to get in contact with their rechartering person. For most Cub Scout packs and Scout troops, the traditional process of just waiting until they're going to bridge and just turning in a transfer application is going to be easiest. But the promote members tool is available if you have, say, a pack and a troop that share a charter organization, maybe even share members of the committee, and the recharting person is the same for both, then it's super easy to move them between. So if you're adding a Scout, it's going to ask you for the same information that exists on on an application. And that's true for adult leaders as well, with one exception. It doesn't ask online for a social security number because putting that data in online can sometimes make people uneasy and things like that. We understand that. So we're not going to ask for that through the recharting process. That doesn't mean you don't need to turn it in. If you're entering any new adult, you need to be turning an application for them as well with the paper rechartering stuff that you have. So when you turn in the packet that has the printout from this system, just verifying that you've done it all in the system, and you turn in if you have youth applications or whatever, you also need to be turning in an adult application that has their social security number because we have to run a background check on that person still. So, and of course in that packet will also be the other physical things we're asking you to turn in, like the new member, or the new background check certification form for the signature. And there's you can also update information on your members. So if you have an adult changing position, in addition to turning in a application for them, you can also go ahead and change their position into rechartering. That means that when the rechartering goes through, it'll just do all those position changes automatically, and we can just file those applications rather than having to enter them one by one. You can also update addresses, phone numbers. Contact information changes don't require an application. But if they're changing positions, we still need that adult application signed by your charter board rep, because of course your charter board has control over who's registered in what position, and so we need their verified signature on it.
And with removals?
You don't need, okay, if you're dropping a member or an adult member, you don't have to get an application for them or anything. You just have to mark them as not re-registering on when you're going through the member update process here. Yeah. Now, the last step that's available right now will be the check roster step. This step, you can press the button check roster, and what it will do is it will check if there's any errors on your rechartering. And the big things that it's looking for are, do you have any youth registered? If you have no youth registered, you do not have any. So that's the first thing it looks for. Do you have any? Do you have 5 adults registered, and do you have an institutional head, a unit leader, a committee chair, a charter org rep, and 2 committee members? It will check for those things. And do all of your registered adults have youth protection training, with the exception of your institutional head and your Tiger Cub and Mayan Cub partners. So if you have an error and you press check roster, it will come up showing you what the error is. It will say, this member doesn't have youth protection training, or your unit is missing a Cub Master, or whatever the error is. And you can go back and make changes from this screen using the links. And when you've resolved all the errors, you will get a nice little message that says the validation was completed, and all of the information in there is all good with the rechartering system, and that means that you're done for now, because until November 1st, you can't go further in this process. We don't know exactly what the rechartering process will look like for the rest. Presumably, it will look similar to how it has in the past, which means you'll have the option to your charter board rep will have to approve it, and it will give you a little checkbox that says, has the charter board rep approved it? And you need to make sure that your charter board rep has looked at the rechartering roster and said, yes, this is okay with us. There's a suggested meeting agenda on the back of your envelope, which you can look at, which is for meeting with your charter.org to see if they're all okay with everything. You don't necessarily have to do a long meeting with your charter org, but you do have to make sure that your charter org rep sees your roster, because it's, they're your partner in scouting. So you've got to make sure that they're with you on everything. And then it will ask you how you want to pay. In years past, the 3 options have been to pay online using a credit card, I guess 2 options. Pay online using a credit card, or pay the council using a check or cash, or a unit account. Now you can pay online, but if there are any problems with your recharter later, like say you turn it in and then a week later you have an extra scout that you need to add or something like that, it might be easier if you pay it in the store, because that way you can change that later. But you can pay online if you'd like. There are a couple of exceptions to this process, but I'll go over it really quick. The main one is if you are if you're rechartering and you're not rechartering in December. There is at least one unit, I think, here that doesn't have a December recharter date. I'm not 100% sure. But if you're rechartering and you don't have a December recharter date, you might want to recharter for only 11 months. so that if you're rechartering in January, you can recharter until the next December. Or you can even recharter for like 14 or 15 months up to 18 if you want to extend your charter longer to meet up with the rest of the recharters in December. If you want to do that, you can't pay online. You have to go through the regular rechartering process and then bring the paperwork to Heidi here in the shop, and then she will have to manually change the amount of months that you're rechartering for. If you want to do that, make sure you let Amy or I know so we know what's going on with that. And finally, I just want to explain to you what all is required with an adult application. So when you're turning in an adult application, you need to have a couple of things. If it's a new adult, you've got to have the application completely filled out with the signature of the charter board rep. You have to have that new background check authorization form, and you need to have a YPT certificate from them taking youth protection training certificate from them taking that youth protection training online or in person somewhere. But you have to have a copy of that certificate turned in with their application. And the reason that's super important is because if they took it online, they're going to have a number in the system already. They're going to have a member number, and we need to make sure we can see that number so we unify those membership accounts, basically. So make sure that you turn in a physical copy of that with the application. And if you're turning in an application for somebody changing positions, you need to have the application signed by the charter board rep, and you need to have the background check authorization, the new one, with it, because you need a background check authorization for every adult. So if you have an adult that's not new and they're not changing positions and everything is staying the same and they're staying a member of your unit, you still need to have, you don't need to have an application, but you still need to have that new background check authorization form. So in that rechartering packet, for every adult that's registered in your unit, you need to have one of those. It's very, very important.
That's turned in at council?
Yes, at the end. By the way, that's the last thing I have to say on my agenda, so it's time for me to answer questions. So yes, you turn it in you turn in your application packet with all your applications and your confirmation out of this system, and there's a Journey to Excellence sheet in there. You turn that in with it, and anything else that you're turning in with rechartering, you need to turn in that packet to the council.
Also, we have to have I don't know, I missed part of it, the stuff. So what you need to make sure for every year, because we get audited, so in your packet, you'll have an orange. If you have an account with the Scout Shop, you need to fill it out again, because we have to change the color every year to prove that those people who can come in and sign for your pack to pick up your award. So make sure you fill out the orange card in there, and it's only allowed 3 signatures on it. So last year was green, this year's orange. And so make sure it's like usually the advancement chair. It doesn't have to be a Cub master or committee chair, but somebody who comes in regularly. And they are checking to make sure that those people are coming in, they're on the card. We get dinged, so we want to keep auditing at the minimal with errors. Thank you. Yes, Kim?
Can we turn that in sooner than the rechartering? Does it have to go?
It's easier to return the chartering, but if you have it filled out, you can bring it in, and it just makes life easier. So if you're ready to change people, please turn it in. Okay, thank you.
But it's fine if you turn it in with the rest of your returning thing. It does go to the store. We take it out of the return to the store. So it's not like they have to stay together.
So,
Yes.
3 people from your unit, in addition to COR, charter organization rep, or would the charter organization rep be?
So for like in your case, it'd probably be you because you are the charter or rep, but you do pick up advancement. So it usually is somebody within the pack, but in your case, it could be a charter org. The person who signs on the bottom is the committee chair.
I could get 2 more people from my background.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
You want
say
somebody
Maggie
who-
wants to come in and sign it, she would be one of those people to pick it up.
You want anybody who you want to be able to use your account, whether it's your charter board rep or your committee chair or your advancement chair, you want them on there.
And you want to make sure the committee chair says, okay.
Yeah.
On the bottom.
Pierre, did you have a question?
No, I just want to have clarification. When you say use their account, there's two parts to that. One is they have official access to getting advancement. And the other is having access to your unit, your trooper packs funds that are in reserve at the store.
That's true. Right. So if you're purchasing things in the store, you need to have access. But also, what do you mean have access to? Like if you want to use it for an event?
Well, no. When I was a Cub Master, my wife was the one who came down and bought stuff because she worked from home and she could get down here in the middle of the day. So we just put her dining down and she'd be able to come down and say, charge it against the PAC's account and pick up all the badges. You have to have an official advancement application, advancement report to be able to pick up rank advancements through the Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts. So someone has to be on that list that is going to be able to take those.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Yes, Jim?
Okay, I have a situation where it goes both ways. Got two people, one primary council's here, then they're a member in a different council in a different region.
Yes,
And then I also have one going the other way as well.
yes, I am aware of it.
So Jim has a question about members who are, sorry, repeating questions to people online here, about people who are registered in two different councils, whether they're registered as their primary council here and another council somewhere else, or their primary council is somewhere else and they're also registered here. So they only need to register once with payment, and then in your rechartering process at the very end, last year in your summary step, you could go in and click you could say you could mark numbers as non-payment in the last step.
Different council.
We don't know 100% what the last steps look like for rechartering this year, but we'll send out a document just like the one that I showed on screen for the last several steps as soon as it's announced by the National Council.
Okay. Then I have another question. I have someone listed twice, an adult listed twice. Same adult, all the information is the same.
You may have two different numbers, so we'll have to.
No, they were the same number.
We'll have to look at it.
Okay.
There might be a glitch in the system, but that's.
It's my brother, so.
Okay.
So Jim has an adult member on his roster that's listed twice. Are they listed with two different positions?
Good question. No, committee member on both.
Okay, well then, they're listed with the same position, so I'm not sure why that would happen. We'll have to check that person's record and ask Heidi.
Yes.
She'll probably know.
When you say you're going to send the information by the end of the month to everybody, how are you going to send that information?
We will email out both on the leader list and to the people that have signed up as rechartering people for their unit. When you come collect your unit rechartering envelope, we'll take down the name of the person who's doing the rechartering as far as that person knows. And we'll send to all those people, we'll send out directly instructions on the new, the last few steps of rechartering. And we'll also send it out to the leader list because it's not like it's a secret.
Yeah, we'll also put it on our Echo newsletter that goes out weekly. So
Absolutely.
you'll see the same information over and over, just to make sure that we capture everybody. Because not everybody signed up for under the whole list of Cub Master, Scout Master, or if leaders are going to change and we don't know. So we try to make sure the information goes out to everybody.
David, did you have a question? Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the background check form. So my two questions are, number one, I believe it requires a wet signature.
Yes.
And then the other one is that, what if we have overlapping between units? You know, we've got people who are both part of the pack and a troop.
As long
Does it
as,
have to go to one place or both?
no, as long as we have one copy, so I know you're the committee chair of the pack and also the Scout Master, we just have to prove that you filled out the form, because we know people are in multiple positions.
So
They're merit badge counselors too, and so as long as they're in one central location, and we can prove that you filled it out, that's what we're concerned about.
So to clarify, so people online can definitely hear, if you have a person that's registered in two different units and they're an adult, then we only need one background check authorization form. But if you're not absolutely sure that, you know, if there's not a strong connection between your rechartering person and that unit's rechartering person, I would just fill out for both, because it doesn't take that much extra time, and it's worth doing to make sure it's done. I said Josie.
What's the difference between these two background check forms?
So I see that one of them is not the new one.
Okay.
Were those both in your packet?
These are in the packet.
Oh, yes, okay. So the background check authorization form that is on the adult application is not the same as the new one. The new one is to make sure that we can run those background checks over every 5 years rather than just once when they apply, which is what the previous authorization
So you
does.
still have to fill out the,
And to be clear, we need both.
yeah, so if you have a new applicant, they have to fill out the one that's attached to the adult application, and then you have to fill out the second form. Thank you.
And I would suspect that eventually they'll change that carbon form, that non-carbon form, so that it satisfies the 5-year.
Yeah.
We're trying to update the youth protection protections, and my background check was done in 1988. So there's a lot of time between then and now. So they want to check on me again and all the other people like me. So that's what that form is for.
Absolutely.
Yes. So on that same form, you said wet signature, can it be a scanned copy, or do you guys need an actual original in the packet from each leader?
So as long as they physically signed it,
Not an e-signature, but an actual
Yeah,
signature.
then we'll
Can you
take it,
scan?
if you scan it
Yeah.
and send it, that'll be good, yes.
so for clarity, if somebody is filling out that background check authorization form, it doesn't need to be a wet signature, meaning that they physically penned their signature on the form. It can't be an e-signature. But if it's scanned to us, that does satisfy the requirement. Although, really, we'd like them all to be in your rechartering packet, because if we're receiving them,
We
at all
get them
times,
via
that'd be great.
scan,
Yeah.
our leaders who can't necessarily hand it to us sometimes.
if you get them via scan and then print them out and put them in the packet, that is acceptable too, as long as they have physically signed it and not used some sort of e-signature.
I have it. One other
Go
question,
ahead.
right. Is there anywhere in this packet a list of what should come back in that envelope? I've been trying to write it down, but I'm like, ooh, orange card, ooh, this new form. So is there a checklist somewhere to make sure we turn it all in right?
You can send everybody an email with a quick summary of what needs to go.
At the end of the month, maybe once you actually have everything out, would you include that?
Yes.
So the question was, is there a list of everything that needs to come back in the rechartering packet at the end of the rechartering process? The answer is that there is not in the rechartering envelope, but what we'll do is when National releases the instructions for the last steps of the online rechartering process, when we send those out, with it, we'll include a checklist for everything that needs to be included in the final rechartering packet. Yes?
What changes in position require new application? If I have a parent that's been part of the committee, that's now the committee chair, new application?
Yes.
So the question was, which changes in position require an adult application? And particularly, if a member is moving from a committee member to the committee chair, does that require an application? The answer is yes, that does require an application for a move from committee member to committee chair. Any change in their registered position in ScoutNet requires a new application. Now, there are a couple of situations that might come up. Like if they're a tiger den leader and they're moving to be a den leader of a different den, that doesn't require an application because they're still registered as just a den leader. If they are a member of the committee in charge of training, pack trainer is a position. So if they're a member of a committee in charge of advancement and they're being asked to take over, say if they're being asked to do membership or rechartering instead, that wouldn't be required. But any time where the what you would write on their application when you're turning it in for the first time would change, that is when it needs to change.
So I noticed I'm still a lion guy instead of a tiger den leader, or a den leader is a generic term. Since lions, sometimes we have different rules for the lions, is that one that would or would not?
No, I don't believe you need to change for that one. Still a den leader.
Where is a list of those positions? Like a secretary and treasurer of a parent committee on that list or not?
Secretary and treasurer, so the question is there a list of those positions somewhere? The answer is there is. It used to be on the adult application, but I didn't check the new one for it. I'm not 100% on that actually.
And the other thing.
Used to be right on the front cover of that.
So,
Okay, so it's online.
so Karen, when you look at the roster, you'll see people. Some units will have specific positions. And then they'll say, please put this person, they're on committee chair, but they're listed with the code as secretary. Some units will say, I have 2 committee chairs, so they don't have a specific position. So we'll have to look up what,
To be a member of committee?
yeah, member of committee, yes.
A member of committee, you could have there's not a position in ScoutNet for secretary. The only positions for committee positions in ScoutNet are PAC trainer, BT, new member coordinator, and committee member. Those are the only 3.
Yeah.
Committee chair. Oh, well, committee chair is a committee position, so yeah, that's true. Committee chair.
The codes for position, I think, are not on the new forms.
Yeah,
They
they're
appear
not.
not to be.
They're not.
Used to be.
I'll send I'll include that in my list of group of things that I'm sending out. I'll send out a list of the position codes because I know I found it online before. There are quite a few, but most of them are for district and council branches. Yes, Jersey.
It's scouting.org, myscouting.org and Scouting Network. Is it the same or different?
Right, so the question was, are my.scouting.org and ScoutNet the same or different? So ScoutNet is the name for the database that has, well, the ScoutNet is the way that employees of Boy Scouts of America access the database. Technically, the database is called Akela, and then everything is connected to Akela. So my.scouting.org is just a different way of accessing the same information to Scout. So they're the same information, but they're different interfaces.
So your training information, for example, in my.scouting.org, updates your ScoutNet record. And when he goes online, your Kayla database, and when he goes online to see whether or not you're trained for your position, you'll go through a system called ScoutNet to be able to get that same information.
So we don't have access to ScoutNet.
No.
Nobody does.
Yes.
I have heard from scouters in other councils that Western Region is requiring YPT review every year. Have we heard anything?
So the question was, one of the scouters in the room has heard a rumor that YBT is being required by the Western Region to be done every year. That is not true as far as, youth protection training is what I mean when I say YBT. And so somebody heard that is being required every year by the Western Region. That is not the case. It was at one time in the past, but the Western Region decided that wasn't a very good idea, and so that is no longer the case. Youth protection training is required to be completed every 2 years. When you take youth protection training, it's good for 2 years, and then you need to take it again. Yes?
And with youth protection training, at the time of recharting, it just has to be current at that time. If it expires in February or March, we don't need them to retake it now. We will just, as a PAC, manage that and have them retake it before it expires.
Yes, the question was, for the purposes of rechartering, does their youth protection training need to be current as of the date of rechartering, or does it need to be current for the full year that's being rechartered? The answer is it only needs to be current as of the December 31st date, if that's the recharter date that you have. So the date of rechartering is when it needs to be current. If it expires in February, say as an example, then they'll get an email saying, hey, your youth protection training is about to expire. And yes, the PAC should encourage their members to stay youth protection trained. If you have a PAC trainer, that's part of that position's duties. Or a youth protection champion, another thing you might have. Yes.
What will council fees be next year?
I do not know. The council fees for next year, as of right now, they are the only council, the fee that comes to council is the $12 insurance. Thank you. Accident and sickness insurance fee. That's what I was looking for. So as of right now, that is the only council fee. if our executive board decides to change anything, of course, we'll let you know immediately.
I have an answer to a question I haven't heard. My job is to ensure that every scout has a trained leader.
Who are you? And what's your job?
This is Jim Sensenbach, our Tonga district training chair. Thank you for doing training chair.
Yes. And so I would implore you that every once in a while you get a situation where you want to part somebody in the registration that doesn't have a function. Scouts that have gone off to college, that are assistant scoutmasters, things like that, please use Unit Scouter Reserve. That's the only one that requires no training except for YPT. Everybody has to have YPT that's registered. That's the one that doesn't need training. Please don't park them in the unit committee because unit committee members need to be trained. So I'm going to hassle you for getting them trained. So make it easy on both of us.
So Jim's talking about a position that you can register an adult for. If you register them in the assistant scoutmaster position or a den leader position or a committee chair position, there are trainings that need to be completed to be considered trained for that position. And it's Jim's job to go around and make sure people are trained. So what he's asking you to do is if you're registering somebody who doesn't have a specific job, register them instead in your Unit Scouter Reserve, which is a position that has the code 92 or 91, depending on if they're in college or an adult that's, if they're between 18 and 20 or 21 and on, which that information is on the thing that I'll send out. But basically, if they're, make sure that you register people that don't have a specific job in your Unit Scouter Reserve. Otherwise, on the roster, they'll come up as untrained because they haven't taken unit committee training or assistant scoutmaster training. But if they're in Unit Scouter Reserve, then they just have to have your protection training, and you can just ask them to help out whenever they're around, and just with whatever. But if they are taking on a particular job, if they're going to be on the unit committee, you should get them trained as a committee member, and then have them in as a committee member.
So why is that important? Well, you now have to have 2 registered scout adult leaders at any meeting, any scout activity. So if you don't have 2 of them, then you can't have the meeting. It's not a scout meeting, and you should disband it. So you may have a dad who just drives, and that's it. Doesn't come to committee meetings or anything, but he's regular as anything for being a driver. Have him register as a Unit Scouter Reserve and take youth protection training, and then in a pinch, he could be that second adult at a meeting for you. But you're not going to screw up your training scores because then you have positions that are filled by people that aren't trained for that position. They're not trained as committee members.
That's still a paid position though, right? Where they have to pay dues to
Excellent question, yes. The only unpaid position that I know of is merit badge counselor.
And institutional.
And institutional badges, yeah.
Not even really a registered position. It's just a placeholder for a name from your organization.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have a question, Jim?
Yeah, you ask someone, hey, have you had training? They may say yes or no, or they may not really be sure because maybe they took it a long time ago. There isn't like a central list, or is there a central list of like people in a unit that and the training that they've gotten?
That's a good question. The question was, is there a central list where you can see which members of your unit are trained and which are not? And there is. There is a tool in my.scouting.org or my.scouting tools called the Training Manager. And you can see a roster of your adult leaders and what their training status is, if they're missing or and what training they've taken. It is accessible by your unit's key 3, which is your unit leader, scoutmaster, advisor, cubmaster, your unit's committee chair, and your unit's chartered organization representative. It can also be delegated to a couple of other people using the my.scouting.org tool called Organization Security Manager. And it can be set so that this person who's on the committee is also our training chair. And then they have access to that tool as well.
If you have access to the advancement system, but this is a different asset. Like you would, okay, so if you're not key 3 and the advancement access is not going to work, you have to have different access.
If you're not key three, so for example, the PAC trainer would want to have access to those training records.
Yes.
Your troop training coordinator would want to have access to those records. There is a backup. There's another database that backs up that. For years, we had difficulty keeping track of computerized training records. They weren't entered, they were entered incorrectly, they were entered with the wrong membership number and so forth. And over the years, we've been trying very hard to make sure that anything in the last 10 years, for example, has been done. Looking at you, you probably took Scoutmaster training back in the 90s. I think I have your name now. So the backup to that is Pierre Landry's hard drive. So when I get a question, I'll get somebody who says, you know, I took it back in Lot 2 or something like that. I'll go back and look at my paper copies or my hard drives, because I've got a historical file of the training attendance reports. And I'll go through and take a look at it. The other day, we were looking for merit badge counselors. Merit badge counselors are now required to have merit badge counselor orientation completed, be a merit badge counselor. And we had a whole bunch of people who took it about 6 years ago, and somehow it didn't get into the system. And yours truly went back and pulled out my records, and now there's 30 odd people that don't have to retake the training. So we do have some backups, but if you come across somebody who's trained, who says, I took all this training a long time ago, it was called something else, Scoutmastership Fundamentals, and I took it. Contact us and we'll track it down for you. Okay.
Thank you. All right, do you all feel ready and prepared to take on the task of rechartering?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Woo! Yeah, we're gonna make sure that our records are correct. We're gonna make sure that we have everything done ahead of time, so it's super easy to enter it in December. We're gonna make sure that no unit lapses this year, and they're all finished by the due date of December 13th is when they need to be in the council.
13th?
13th. It's on your envelope.
Friday the 13th?
December 31st is the last day is the last day that before you get lapsed. So 13th is when we want to have it, so we can get it all entered. If you turn it in after that, it's, it'll be done.
The reason why is technically due December 31st. We have one person, Heidi, who has to put in probably about 70, double check everybody's paperwork and make sure it's entered. So we want to give her as much time to make sure all your records are done correctly. We don't want her to say, Heidi, we have 70 units that have to be put in on the 31st. So that's why we asked to give her time to do it. She also helps out in our shop. So we want to make sure that she has time to do it. Thank
And
you.
just in case you don't know, every application that gets turned in does have to be entered with a keyboard. It does not get scanned or anything else. It is physically typed in. So it's
We're trying to drag the Boy Scouts of America into the 21st century.
We'll get there.
Whole process. Any other questions? I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is not one of the funner parts of scouting, but it is one of the more important parts. We need to keep track of who's registered in our program and make sure that we keep our children safe. We need to make sure that the people that are working with our children are trained and that they get credit for the training that they took. We need to make sure that the children in the program are properly registered, their advancement is recorded, so they get recognition for all that hard work that they're doing. So the work you're doing tonight is really important. It may not be the funnest part of scouting, but it is one of the more important parts of scouting to make sure that we keep track of what's going on inside of scouting. Like they say in management, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And you need to be able to keep track of who's in and who's doing what and who has done what in your packs, your troops, and your venturing crews. So thanks again for coming tonight. We have any other questions for Pete before we have them step aside? Yes.
So where do we, to do the charting, we do it on your website, council, right?
You can go to the council website. There's a link there. Probably the easiest way is to log into my.scouting.org and click on the Internet Rechartering link under Legacy Web Tools. So that'll just take you directly there. If you go on our website, it's under Resources, Internet Advancement, or Internet Rechartering. Internet Rechartering. Yeah, so it's there, but it's also through my.scouting.org where you access all the other tools.
Any other questions for Pete? This is not your only chance to ask him questions. His number is the same as the council's number. Just ask for Pete or Amy, and they will answer your questions.
No,
Ask for Pete, don't ask for him.
Feel free. I love answering questions about rechartering because I love paperwork.
That is second of the one go home.
And we appreciate all the work that it took to put all this stuff together.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So let me just tell you about how Roundtable works. We have what are called 3 sections. One is the Big Rocks. That is a session that's of interest to all leaders, and that's what we just did. The Big Rock session tonight was for Internet Rechartering and the rechartering process in Verdugo Hills Council. Then we split up into 2 groups. One is for the Scouts PSA, the old Boy Scouts, but now Scouts PSA. And tonight we're going to talk about the interesting position called the new membership coordinator. And then the Cub Scouts are going to go into the boardroom with Maureen, and they're going to talk about, what is it?
Nature.
Nature. Nature in all its glory. Not just nature, but nature in all its glory tonight. So if you're in the Cub Scout program, feel free to join Maureen in the other room. And if you're in the Scouts PSA program or in venturing, please feel free to stay here, and we'll talk about new membership coordinator. Thank you.